Greetings everyone, Ben here from The Virtual Economist and welcome to a new video. As you guys can probably tell from the title, the time has finally come for me to make one of the most requested videos on the channel, a video about the key to refined ratio. Now, this isn't just going to be one video. This is going to be part 1 of 3 in a comprehensive series discussing everything to do with the key value and its effect on the economy as a whole. In this first episode, I'm going to be talking about exactly what happened to keys, what really caused this massive change in price, and how it affects trading in the current economy. So, you ready? Let's get right on into it. Because there's going to be people watching this video who are less into the trading community, I think it's necessary that I explain the basics. Just like money in the real world, keys are the main currency of TF2. They can be purchased in the Manco store for exactly $2.50 in the United States, and can then be used to purchase any type of item from other players, such as cosmetics, stranges, and unusuals. The secondary currency is refined metal. Refined metal, or ref for short, is worth significantly less than a key and helps people buy items that are inexpensive in value. Just like how each American dollar is worth exactly 100 cents, each key is worth a certain amount of ref. However, there is one big difference here. There is no defined exchange rate between refined and keys. This means that unlike how one American dollar is worth exactly 100 cents, the exchange rate between keys and refined metal is constantly fluctuating up to the whims of supply and demand. And this, more than anything else, is the key to understanding exactly what's going on right now with the two main currencies. Alright, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's jump right on into the meat of the video. Chances are you've probably seen people complaining or ranting about the key to refined ratio. So, what exactly are these people talking about? Well, if you're at all part of the trading scene, you've probably noticed that in the last 2 years, keys have gone up from being valued at around 2 refined metal to now almost 30 refined. Now, let's skip right to the chase here. People aren't foolishly complaining. This is bad for the economy. However, just like the fall of the buds, I'm pretty sure that the majority of people know that it's bad, yet have many misconceptions as to what really happened and what's really going on. Thus, my goal in this video is to show you guys exactly what really happened, pointing out misconceptions as I get to them. From what I have noticed, however, there is one enormous misconception about the value of keys that I believe is so important to the understanding of the situation that I must address it up front. You see, when keys increase or decrease in the amount of refined metal that they are valued in, people assume that keys are either going up or down in monetary value. But this just isn't further from the truth. Keys are the most stable currency in the entire game and consistently sell for $2.50 on the Manco store and a little bit less on the Steam community market. Keys always have a value of $2.50 in the United States. They never change and are always worth the same amount. Turns out the currency problem has nothing to do with keys and everything to do with refined metal. When you observe a key going up in the amount of refined metal it sells for, you are more accurately observing the price change of the refined metal. If this sounds confusing, that's because it kinda is, but I'll save that for the next episode. For now, what you need to understand is that the problem is with the refined metal, not with keys. Okay, now that I've gotten that cleared up, we can move on to explaining exactly why keys have skyrocketed to almost 30 refined. First off, we need to remember that the key to refined ratio is based off supply and demand. In order to understand what's going on here, we need to take a look at both supply and demand separately, looking at how they affect the price of refined metal, because like I said, the problem is with the metal, not with the keys. Anyway, let's start with supply. According to backpack.tf data on visible backpacks, there is around 4 million refined metal in existence. It can also be found that there is approximately 900,000 keys out there. Going off sheer quantity, it can be said that refined has far more supply than keys. However, just having more supply isn't exactly what's causing a shift in the exchange rate between keys and refined. What's more important is the rate at which more of each item is added to the game. If we look at the slopes of the backpack.tf existence versus time graphs, we can see the refined metal is increasing at a steady rate, where keys go up and down but continue to have roughly the same amount in existence. When you think about it, this makes a lot of sense. Whenever you get a weapon drop and craft it into metal, you are simply adding more and more refined metal into circulation. There's no real practical way that refined metal can be removed from the game, so combined with every other player out there, it's pretty easy to see how there is over 4 million ref in existence and steadily increasing. While many people add keys to circulation by buying them from the Manco store, I would say that just as many people use them to unbox. This essentially removes them from the market and helps level out the amount in existence, which we can see from the graph. It's interesting to point out that the amount of keys actually sharply declined around October and November, but this is likely due to the increased level of unboxing during Halloween. During the rest of the year, I would expect the number of keys to continue to rise back to where they were as more people just go ahead and buy them during the off-season. If we look at a simple price versus quantity graph of refined metal back in, say, 2014, we can really see what's going on here. On the graph, the place where the two lines intersect is the market price, which we can see is roughly around 25 cents per refined metal. Now, as we move through time, the amount of refined metal continues to increase and increase, shifting the supply curve downward. It might seem a little confusing that the line shifts down as supply increases, but don't blame me, that's just how it works. Now, as you can tell, the lines intersect at a much lower price, around the 7 cents we see today. So that's how supply affects refined metal. Now, let's take a look at demand. In TF2, demand can be derived simply by looking at the amount of uses an item has. Keys, for instance, have a number of uses. They can be used to unbox, they can be used for high-tier unusual trading or just expensive items in general. They can be used to consolidate value in a small amount of backpack space. They can be sold on the community market for Steam wallet funds, and they can be sold on PayPal for real-world money. As you can tell, there are a lot of different uses for keys. Ref, on the other hand, seems to only have one main purpose. It can be used to buy low-value items. Technically, you can use ref to craft hats or weapons, but, as I'm sure you're aware, these features are hardly ever used because they simply cannot be profitable. You also cannot sell refined metal on the community market like keys, and ref rarely sells for cash over PayPal. So in general, there's really only one use for ref and tons of uses for keys. Thus, it can be simply concluded that keys have a high demand and ref has a low demand, meaning that most people are going to want to trade for keys rather than refined metal. Okay, so how would this affect the cost of refined? Let's go ahead and make another graph like we did for supply. In 2014, we can see again that the two lines intersect at around 25 cents per refined metal. While it's not like the amount of uses of refined decreases from the already tiny amount it has, it does seem that over time, more and more people realize just how pointless it is and its demand continues to fall. So this can be shown by shifting the demand curve down, and would you look at that, by 2017 refined is worth as little as 7 cents. Combining supply and demand, it's pretty easy to see how refined has had such a huge downfall. Now let's go ahead and apply this to the main topic here, the key to refined exchange rate. With such high supply and low demand, nobody really wants refined metal. And what better place to put it than in keys, the most stable currency in the entire game. So as you can imagine, everybody goes out of their way to try to convert any metal that they have into pure keys. However, there's a catch. People don't really want to sell as many keys as people are willing to buy. After all, if I were a seller, I'd rather just have my key too. Why would I want to sell it for useless refined? As you can imagine, this presents a problem. People want to buy keys, but nobody's willing to sell them for their market price. Well, what's the solution? Well, to advertise buying keys for more than market value. If you make a buy order on backpack.tf saying you are paying a refined more than its price, well, then it's pretty easy for you to be able to sell that refined for a sweet, sweet key. What happens next, I'm sure you're familiar with. A suggestion pops up to change the value of a key. If enough people are paying more than backpack.tf price, then it only really makes sense for backpack.tf to adjust their value accordingly. So pretty soon the suggestion passes and the price is updated so that keys are worth even more refined. However, most importantly, since supply and demand remain the same, this happens over and over and over again to the point where keys are now worth as much as 29 refined. When I first started trading, I was almost certain that backpack.tf was the only reason keys kept increasing in refined metal. After all, the moment they were priced at a ref or two higher, people were already willing to buy for more refined than the new price, creating an unending cycle of rising prices. However, as I've gotten more experienced, I don't necessarily think that that's true. Being someone who has bought and sold many keys, I honestly think that it's safe to say that whether backpack.tf recorded the price of keys or not, keys would continue to increase in refined value. People would still want to buy for higher and higher prices simply due to the low amount of people willing to sell their keys for refined. And honestly, at the end of the day, backpack.tf simply records these higher common trading points, and it's not exactly like they themselves are trying to crash the market. I also think it's important to remind you guys that even as keys raise in refined, they always remain around roughly $2.50 in real monetary value, so it's not like keys are ever going to be so expensive that you'll never be able to afford them. Now that we know how keys got to be worth so much refined, I think it's important to take a look at how this would negatively affect the economy. To me, there are three main issues. Number one, it makes trading a hassle. This one is probably the most self-explanatory. As keys become worth more and more refined, when you sell a key or two, your backpack can easily get flooded with a seemingly infinite amount of metal. The backpack system really isn't friendly to use, and it can be a huge pain to try and move massive amounts of metal in your backpack. Plus, most people have a limited backpack space and they probably don't want to fill it all up with metal, making holding onto excess refined something that is quite frustrating. Number two, it artificially deflates item values. You might not notice this at first, but since most low tier items are priced in refined metal on backpack.tf, whenever refined metal loses monetary value, every single item priced in your backpack in refined metal also loses value. While this technically makes items cheaper, it can also make people with lots of low value items lose a lot of monetary value. Just think about it, if you sold a key for 3 5-ref items when keys were 15 ref, now when keys are almost 30 ref, your items are still worth around 5 ref each, meaning that you lost around a half a key in value. Sure, price suggestions could come up to raise the value of your 5-ref items to be a little bit more proportional to the key, but this honestly isn't likely for most cosmetics and stranges due to their sheer amount of supply. Number 3, it makes it very difficult to profit in low tier trading. In my eyes, this is by far the biggest problem. In these days, it is incredibly difficult and time consuming to do a scrap too unusual. This is because profit margins as a percentage of the total key value have decreased significantly. Well, what do I really mean by this? Well, back in 2013, keys had a value of around 2.33 refined metal. If you made a rec profit in every trade buying and selling normal items, then it would take you 7 low value trades to make the value of 1 key. However, in 2017, assuming keys are worth a neat 30 ref, if you went ahead and tried the same strategy, it would take you a whopping 90 rec profit trades to make it up to a key. The same thing can be said about weapon drops and creating value. When keys were 2.33 ref, it only took you 48 weapons to make a key. Now it's going to go ahead and cost you an insane 540 weapons to add up to 1 key in value. Let's just say that idling for profit is 100% impossible. Lastly, because most items have incredibly low profit margins, most people really just don't find much point in buying and selling regular items themselves. This has led to a proliferation of trading bots doing low value commodity trading, making it even harder for people still trying to make profit to get any business selling items on the classifieds without being able to offer instant accepts or guaranteed trades. Before I go, at the time of making this video, keys have actually dropped over 4 refined metal in value, which I'm sure that many of you guys really want me to address. Honestly though, there really isn't a whole lot to talk about. The general consensus is that keys dropped simply due to the huge new influx of keys after the holiday season, with many people spending their new Steam gift cards they got for Christmas on keys, and in turn selling those keys for refined metal to buy low tier cosmetics. In the short term, refined metal suddenly increased in demand, which caused people to actively sell their keys, lowering the refined value of a key. Unfortunately though, this is simply temporary. After a few more weeks, people will realize that they would rather just have keys again, and keys will once again increase in ref. In fact, at the time of finishing this video, keys have already started to go back up in refined value. It looks like supply and demand have gone back to where they were before, and it doesn't really look like it's going to be changing anytime soon. More metal is still being added to the game, and it still really only has one use. In fact, anytime keys go down in refined metal, honestly, they're just going to eventually go up in the long run due to this very problem. Anyway, that about wraps up part 1 in my series on keys and refined. I put a lot of work and time into this video, so I honestly hope that you guys really enjoyed it. Join me next time where I talk about an incredibly important key and refined problem that nobody seems to be talking about. Until then, thanks for watching.